I'm Jess Killinger, an architect in Colorado. Welcome to my channel where I share how I tackle projects for my own home as an architect. Today we're going to be talking about why it's really helpful to make a vision board for your home and how to do it. I'll also be sharing my vision board that I've made for our home. Let's get started. I love a good renovation show where they come in and rip everything out, and in 1 to 4 weeks they've completely overhauled the entire space. It is so satisfying to watch that instant transformation. But when it comes to the reality of renovating your home, most people can't afford to do an entire room all at once, let alone the entire house. I know I can't. Between budget and my schedule, I typically have to break down each room into several small steps. But it can be challenging to do that and end up with a result that looks great because it could take you years to complete your home. I can't even remember what I was doing 2 weeks ago, let alone keep a design concept in my head for years. That's why I think it's a good idea to make a vision board for your home. Here are 3 ways this tool can help while decorating and renovating your home over time. Number 1, a vision board can help you maintain a cohesive vision throughout your whole home. If all your projects can start from the same place, there's a much greater chance you'll end up with a cohesive look throughout your whole home. Say, for example, I want to make this background behind me more interesting than a blank white wall. In that completely hypothetical situation, I would make a mood board for that project by first referencing my vision board. Now, a video backdrop was definitely not something I was thinking about when I made our vision board for our home, but I can still pull colors and textures and concepts from it and create something that doesn't look completely out of place. Number 2, promote self-awareness. I'm about to dive into the process of making a vision board for your home, and it is without a doubt a practice in self-awareness. Instead of saving hundreds or even thousands of images, you'll have to go through them and actually consider why you were drawn to them. You'll start to notice patterns and make connections, and it just inherently requires a lot of introspective reflection. Number 3, avoiding the trappings of trends. I don't think trends are innately bad, but they are one of the easiest ways to derail a vision when you're working on something over time. A vision board can help you avoid this because it's a way to really nail down the look you love. You can use the images and notes you've made as a reference when you are planning new projects or shopping. And that's a great way to make sure you're staying on track. Personally, I rarely find an interior design style that I don't like for some reason or another, and that can be a pretty big problem because if I just bought everything I saw that I liked, my home would be a complete mess. It's really helpful to be able to stay on track, especially for my wallet. Okay, how do you make a vision board for your home? This process can be broken down into 3 easy steps: brain dump, curate, and study. Let's take a look at each of these. Step 1, inspiration brain dump. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like, whether you're using Pinterest or saving photos to your phone or desktop or cutting things out for magazines. There are no rules here. The point is to save whatever you're really drawn to. I do have one piece of advice for this step. Try not to box yourself into a specific style quite yet. For example, you might know you love modern farmhouse, and that's great. But if you start there, you might miss out on your love for French country. So try to look around and make sure there's not a different kind of style that catches your eye. I don't think there's really a time frame you need to spend on this step. You could spend over a year collecting images, and that's absolutely okay. However, if you are in a rush, please make sure to try to spend at least 2 weeks on this because you need to allow yourself time to find inspiration. Okay, step 2, curate. This is basically the editing step, and I like to go through this a couple of times to really get down to the cream of the crop. I started by making a new board in Pinterest for our new home. And then I divided that into smaller subfolders for different spaces and types of ideas. I try to keep these subfolders down to about 50 images, and I can actually see there are a few here that I need to go through and reorganize. My absolute final step in curating was to create a subfolder in my Pinterest board called The Best Aesthetic. And I only put images in there if both me and my husband Josh loved them. So we ended up with a highly curated board of about 30 images, and that's still too many for a vision board, but it really helped us understand the vibe we were going for in our home. Step 3, study. Now, the first 2 steps were definitely prep steps. This is the part where we're actually going to make the vision board. For this project, I'm using a tool called Milanote. It's basically a digital tack board that's a little more visually dynamic than Pinterest. I found that it helped me see connections between different things as I was building my vision board. Now, it's free for the first 100 notes that you use, so whatever I'm working on at any given time, that should be plenty of space for me. I started this board by pulling all of my images from my best aesthetic board into it. I whittled these down even further throughout the process of making the board, and eventually I brought in some additional pictures to help isolate specific ideas. So it's an iterative process. I came up with these 7 categories to study and define what they mean for our dream home. I think this is a great list if you're trying to really understand the big picture of your home design. Let me know if you can think of any others. Let's jump into the vision board I made, and I'll walk you through what these 7 categories looked like for our home. Number 1, guidelines. I start every architecture project off by making a list of guidelines, and it made sense to do that here too. These are typically a checklist of simple statements to make sure each decision is in line with your goals. But before making this list, I started by recording the statement, "Be bold and have fun." This is something we agreed on when we bought our house and started to talk about our dreams for it. I guess you could call this our mission statement, and I wanted it to be like the headline for this mood board. After that, I started writing down guidelines and checked with Josh to make sure he agreed with these. We came up with make us smile, functional, easily cleaned and maintained, not boring, and kid and pet friendly. Now, we don't have kids, but if that ever changes, we want to make sure that we don't have to completely redo our home. This is definitely one of those an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure situations. Number 2, color. I wanted to look at color after guidelines because I could tell it was going to play a big role in our home just by looking at our inspiration photos. I used a site called cooler.co to build the color palette. The goal of this palette was to distill the colors in our inspiration pictures into a single image that's quick to digest. To do this, I pulled colors from several images and spent a lot of time going back and forth to build the correct palette. One tip I picked up through doing all this is that cooler.co only lets you build a palette off one image. So I had to do a lot of manual merging to make the palettes I wanted. In hindsight, it would have been easier to take a screenshot of all of our inspiration images and use that to build each palette. So after a lot of fiddling, I ended up with 4 groups of color. Base colors, which are deep, saturated jewel tones, think sapphire, emerald, amethyst, etc. Accent colors, these are vibrant and bold and will work best used sparingly. Brown neutrals to show some warm wood tones, and gray neutrals to represent the cool gray of our base wall color and some possible concrete finishes. This is definitely a lot of color, and I only have this many groups because we find joy in color. Our design is going to be very color centric. However, if you're going for a different look, you might be able to get away with a lot less. Number 3, profiles. After color, I wanted to look at profiles because they play a key role in identifying specific interior design styles. I started with making notes about craftsman style details. Now, our inspiration images didn't really show a lot of craftsman style, but this was the style for the trim in our last house, and we loved it. So I've decided to replicate that look in our new house when we redo trim and cabinets. Our inspiration images did clearly show that the main style we're drawn to is mid-century modern. So this is our primary style, and I've made notes here for us to focus on the style when selecting furniture and fixtures. Number 4, mood, vibe. There are a lot of different ways to define the mood you're looking for in your home. Maybe you want something that's bright, airy, and open, or maybe you want a home that's calming and spa-like. Whatever you're looking for, this section is pretty straightforward. Just make a few quick notes and pick some images that reflect those ideas. For our home, I came up with this list. Happy. We'll communicate this primarily through bright colors. Bistro, coffee house vibes. So think cozy and inviting. Comfortable, which we'll achieve through the use of natural materials and fabrics. Welcoming. We want our home to be welcoming to visitors and made for conversation. And last but not least, we want our home to be fun. Add those few pictures to these notes and this section is done. Number 5, lighting. For lighting, we're talking about the design of the light. Not the amount of light, but the way the fixture looks. This is the list I made to describe the types of lights we are more drawn to. Mid-century modern statement in our main living spaces. Opaque globes, contemporary lampshades, uplighting, and task lights. These last 3 got edited because the point here is to be descriptive in a way that will help make decisions later. So I edited contemporary lampshades to be simple lampshades because that tells me to stay away from complicated or highly patterned shades. I also deleted uplighting and task lights because these are just categories of lights that should be considered for all types of spaces, and these words don't give me any information as to the aesthetic we're looking for. So I replaced them with the phrase bold and geometric, and I added an image that aligns with that idea. Number 6, texture. Texture is always important in architecture and interiors because it helps to add depth to a look. But with our bold color palette, texture will be even more important to help us avoid a color blocking look. I found these 2 images in our inspiration picks. They show a lot of different textures and I used them to help me come up with these notes on materials we can use to add texture to our look. Velvet and chunky woven fabrics and knits. These types of fabrics will be great to add a soft, cozy feeling to a living room or bedroom. Wood, preferably with thin, minimal grain lines, so more of a straight grain or quarter sawn look. Rugs. I think rugs with a medium pile or textured with alternating pile heights will work best. Leafy plants. Preferably ones that are difficult to kill, because I seem to have a talent for doing that. Then finally we have geometric tile. We've already added some black hex tiles to our powder room, and we love the way they look. Moving on to number 7, fun features. I decided to make this section to give myself a place to save a handful of ideas about fun features we'd like to see in our home. Neon signs. I realize that neon signs are really trendy and will probably die soon, but at the moment, I really want one. The problem is that custom signs are really expensive, so I'll wait to buy one just to make 100% sure I'm not impulse buying this. Crystal faceted doorknobs. In our previous home, we had crystal knobs that were original to the house, and I loved the feel of them in my hand and that little touch of shine they added to the house. Dining room, bench, booth. I personally love the use of an upholstered bench or even a sofa at a dining table because it just gives me the feeling of being at an upscale restaurant. Gallery wall. I love a bright and busy gallery wall. The best ones mix in different types of items like sculptures or plants. Cat-friendly features. This example pic I chose shows a deep sofa table backed up to a window. My cats would love something like this because it would let them look out the window while also being close to us. Colored doors. Why not? This is exactly the kind of design twist that I love. It's not unheard of, but it's definitely not something you see everyone doing. And as you've seen, we love color, so I'm all about any excuse to add it to something. Subtle gaming or fandom references. We love games. We also love several different fandoms, and I think it's super fun to add subtle nods to these interests around our home. The very last step was to clean up the board a bit so it's easier to read. I had a lot of fun making this vision board for our home. If you want to take a closer look at it, I've shared a link to a PDF in the description for you to download. I realize that this is a little in-depth, but home renovations shouldn't be taken lightly, especially when we're talking about expensive updates that are material and resource heavy. These investments should last you at least 5 to 10 years, and a vision board is a great way to make sure you love the decisions you make for years to come. If you want to see a project that was designed using this vision board as a guide, check out this sunburst mirror thrift flip. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'd love to help if I can, and until next time, Thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye!